In a world often marked by power, ambition, and material wealth, the life of Saint Francis of Assisi stands as a beacon of simplicity, humility, and boundless love for all living beings. Born into comfort and privilege, he willingly gave it all up to follow a path of peace, poverty, and devotion. His heart beat with compassion for the poor, the sick, and even for animals and nature. More than 8 centuries later, his example still touches millions around the world. This is the story of a man who truly lived for others, and in doing so became a saint for all humanity. Francis was born in the year 1181 or 1182 in the city of Assisi, Italy. His birth name was Giovanni di Pietro di Bernardone, but he would later be called Francis, a name likely given by his father in admiration of French culture. His family was wealthy. His father was a successful cloth merchant, and Francis grew up surrounded by luxury and comfort. From a young age, Francis was known for his charm, charisma, and love of music and poetry. He dreamed of becoming a knight, a hero of war, admired by others. Like many young men of his time, he sought glory on the battlefield and longed for adventure. But life had other plans for him. In his early 20s, Francis joined a military expedition and was taken prisoner. During his year in captivity, he fell seriously ill. That experience, along with dreams and inner reflections, began to change him. After his release, he no longer found joy in his old pleasures. A deep restlessness entered his heart, as if something greater was calling him. He began to spend more time alone, praying and meditating. He gave away money to the poor and showed kindness to lepers, people considered untouchable at the time. His friends and family were confused. His father became angry, unable to understand why his son was abandoning the life prepared for him. But Francis had found a new direction. The turning point in the life of Francis came when he fully embraced a life of poverty, not as a burden, but as a joyful act of freedom. In a world obsessed with wealth, status, and possessions, Francis made a radical and almost unthinkable choice: to give up everything he owned in order to follow the example of Christ more closely. After returning to Assisi from his experiences of illness and war, Francis found himself drawn more and more to solitude, prayer, and acts of charity. He began to see wealth as a barrier between people, something that separated the rich from the poor, the healthy from the sick, and the powerful from the weak. And so, he made the decision to become poor with the poor, to live among those who had nothing, and serve them with all his heart. One of the most powerful and symbolic moments of his transformation happened in front of the Bishop of Assisi and a crowd of townspeople. Francis, now misunderstood and disowned by his wealthy father, stood before everyone and took off all his fine clothes, returning them to his father. Standing nearly naked before the bishop, he made a declaration that still echoes through history. "From now on, I will no longer say, 'My father Pietro di Bernardone,' but 'Our Father who art in heaven.'" This act was not a rejection of family, but a profound embrace of a new family, the family of all humanity, especially the most forgotten and vulnerable. Francis then began to live as a beggar. He wore simple clothes, often made from rough fabric, and walked barefoot. He slept wherever he could, in caves, abandoned buildings, or under the stars. He asked for food not for himself alone, but often to give to those in greater need. He gave up all possessions, but in doing so, he discovered a freedom that no riches could offer: the freedom to love without limit, to give without fear, and to walk humbly with God and others. He often said, "If we had any possessions, we would need weapons to defend them." In that simple sentence, he revealed a deep truth: that greed leads to violence, but poverty, chosen freely out of love, can lead to peace. His poverty was not misery. On the contrary, it was filled with joy, music, laughter, and brotherhood. He would sing to the birds, smile at strangers, and speak with warmth to every creature he met. He had nothing, yet in his heart he carried everything: compassion, faith, and a burning love for God and all creation. To Francis, poverty was not the absence of wealth. It was the presence of trust. Trust that God would provide. Trust that goodness would always rise. Trust that love, when freely given, could heal even the deepest wounds. This radical choice of poverty became the foundation of the Franciscan way of life. And through it, Francis offered the world not just an example of holiness, but a path toward peace, one step closer to the kingdom of heaven. After embracing a life of poverty, Francis didn't simply choose to live without possessions. He chose to live with those who were rejected by society. He did not pity the poor from afar. He walked beside them, ate with them, cared for them, and called them brothers and sisters. His heart belonged entirely to those the world had forgotten: the lepers, the beggars, the sick, the lonely, the voiceless. At a time when leprosy was feared and the sick were cast out from communities, Francis did something few dared to do. He kissed a leper. For him, this act was not only a test of courage or a gesture of charity, it was a moment of transformation. It symbolized the breaking down of fear, the healing of pride, and the birth of a new way of seeing others, not as burdens, but as reflections of God's image. He would later say that this moment changed everything. What was once bitter became sweet. What had once terrified him now became his calling. Francis didn't seek recognition for his acts. He often told his followers to live and serve without expecting anything in return. Whether he was helping a poor farmer, sharing bread with a hungry family, or comforting someone in despair, he did so with a joy that seemed to come from another world. He also preached not just with words, but with his actions. In every village and town he visited, people were moved more by his way of life than by his sermons. His kindness, humility, and peaceful presence attracted many who felt lost in the noise and injustice of the world. In time, his example inspired others, especially young men from noble families, to follow in his footsteps. They too gave up their wealth and titles to live a life of service. Together, they formed a new kind of brotherhood, one not based on blood or status, but on shared compassion, humility, and love for the poor. They called themselves the Lesser Brothers, the Fratres Minores, because they believed true greatness came from becoming small, from being the last and the least. They wore simple robes tied with a rope, walked barefoot, and greeted everyone with a peaceful heart. Their message was clear. You don't need riches to live a rich life. True joy comes from giving, not getting. True dignity comes from service, not power. And true love comes from recognizing the divine in every single person, especially in those who are most overlooked. In living with the poor, Saint Francis discovered a truth that continues to move hearts today. When you walk with the forgotten, you never walk alone, for it is there that you walk with God. Francis saw all of creation as a reflection of God's love. He called the sun brother sun, and the moon sister moon. He preached to birds and tamed a fierce wolf that was terrifying a village. These stories may sound like legends, but they speak to a deeper truth. Francis had a heart that recognized the divine in every creature. His famous Canticle of the Creatures is one of the earliest works of Italian literature. It praises the earth, the stars, the elements, everything as part of a great, loving family created by God. In today's world, he is considered the patron saint of animals and the environment, a symbol of ecology and care for the planet. Saint Francis of Assisi was not only a man of poverty and compassion, but also a true ambassador of peace. In a time marked by violence, divisions, and fear, he became a gentle voice calling the world back to unity, forgiveness, and love. His heart, completely surrendered to God, radiated a peace so pure that it touched everyone he met. For Francis, peace was not just the absence of conflict, it was the active presence of love, mercy, and mutual understanding. He believed that every human being, no matter their background, belief, or status, was worthy of dignity and respect. He often referred to all people as brothers and sisters, and lived out that belief in every interaction. He didn't shy away from people who were different from him. One of the most remarkable moments in his life occurred during the Fifth Crusade, when he traveled, without weapons or guards, across battle lines to meet Sultan al-Kamil of Egypt, a powerful Muslim leader. At great personal risk, Francis came not to debate, convert, or condemn, but to offer friendship and speak heart to heart. What happened during their meeting remains one of the most powerful interfaith encounters in history. The Sultan, moved by Francis's sincerity and humility, welcomed him with honor. The two spoke for days, not as enemies, but as men seeking truth and peace. Though they came from different faiths, they found common ground in their reverence for God and their desire for harmony among people. Francis returned from that meeting even more convinced that peace begins in the heart, and that true change comes not through force, but through compassion and example. He also worked tirelessly to bring peace within his own community. Whenever conflicts arose among his brothers, Francis reminded them to respond not with anger, but with prayer and gentleness. He once said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." This teaching wasn't just a verse from Scripture, it was the law of his life. Even animals seemed to sense the peace within him. The famous story of Francis and the wolf of Gubbio illustrates this perfectly. When a fearsome wolf was terrorizing a village, Francis walked out to meet it, not with fear, but with calm. He spoke to the animal as if it were a brother, and miraculously, the wolf listened. The villagers were astonished, and a lasting peace was made between man and beast. This moment became a beautiful symbol of Francis's ability to bring harmony where others saw only danger. His message of peace extended to the entire world. He spoke of the earth as our sister, of animals as our companions, and of the stars as reminders of God's beauty. He encouraged people to forgive, to love their enemies, and to choose peace even when it seemed impossible. To this day, his famous prayer remains a guiding light for countless people around the world. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. Saint Francis did not bring peace with armies or power. He brought it with a smile, a kind word, a gentle hand, and a heart completely filled with God's love. His legacy reminds us all that peace is not a dream, but a mission, one we are all invited to carry out, step by step, with courage and humility. As Francis grew older, his body grew weaker. He suffered from illness and blindness, but he never complained. He continued to serve others, preach love, and live in complete poverty. In 1224, while deep in prayer on Mount Laverna, Francis received the stigmata, the marks of Christ's wounds, on his hands, feet, and side. He was the first known person to receive this mystical sign. Even in pain, he remained joyful, calling his suffering sister bodily pain. He accepted everything as a gift from God. On October 3rd, 1226, surrounded by his brothers, Francis passed away while singing the Psalms. He was only 44 years old. 2 years later, he was canonized as a saint by Pope Gregory IX. The life of Saint Francis continues to shine like a gentle flame across the centuries. His message of simplicity, love, and universal brotherhood remains as powerful today as it was in the 13th century. He inspired countless people, including Pope Francis, the first pope in history to take his name, a sign of deep admiration and a commitment to the poor, the environment, and peace. Francis teaches us that true greatness comes not from wealth or power, but from humility, love, and the willingness to give everything for others. In a world still full of division, pain, and injustice, the story of Saint Francis calls us back to what matters most: compassion, simplicity, and care for all creation. He reminds us that even one heart, when filled with love, can change the world. If this story of Saint Francis of Assisi inspired you, don't forget to like this video and share it with others who need a message of hope. And if you'd love to keep learning English through powerful and uplifting real-life stories, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next one. Thank you for watching. May the peace of Saint Francis be with you always.